So today we're going to be talking about Unit 2, Notes 2B. So we're going to be talking about graphing and writing systems of inequalities. So not only today we're going to be graphing, we're going to have to be putting some things into standard form, and we're also going to have to be writing things as well. So let's take a look at this. So when we're graphing inequalities in standard form, in order for us to graph, you have to solve for y. That's the biggest thing we've been working on with standard form, is that they have to be in slope-intercept form or solve for y in order for us to graph it. So you can graph the inequalities once they're in slope-intercept form. So let's take a look at what some of those are going to look like. Let's just start with a basic review of inequalities. So before we do this, we need to go ahead and solve each of these for y. Now remember, the biggest thing we need to be careful about is if we divide or multiply by a negative, we have to flip that inequality symbol. So be watching that as you're solving these. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to solve this first equation for y. So I have x plus y is less than 1. So to solve for, let me be less than, there we go. So to solve for y, we're going to subtract x from both sides. So then I have y is less than negative x plus 1. So we're going to go ahead and graph it. So we're crossing the y-axis at 1, and then we're going down 1, right 1. Okay, so then I'm going to have a dotted line because there's no line underneath that inequality symbol. So I have a dotted line, and then I notice that the alligator is facing away from the y. So I'm going to shade down for that first one. Let's take a look at that second one. So we have negative 2x plus y is less than or equal to 3. So first thing we're going to do is add 2x to both sides. And then we get y is less than or equal to 2x plus 3. So now we can go ahead and graph that. We're crossing the y-axis at 3, and then we're going up 2 over 1. Now I notice that there's a line underneath the inequality symbol, so this line is going to be solid. And then again, the alligator is facing away from the y, so we need to shade down. So my overlap for these two are in this region right here. Okay. Next, let's take a look at number 2. Now this one is already in slope-intercept form for us. We don't have to do any solving. Happy, happy day, right? So let's go ahead and let's take a look at this first one. So for this first one, we're crossing the y-axis at 1, and then my slope is 1 over 1. Okay, so that 1 is being multiplied by x. So we're going up 1 over 1, and then we're going to go ahead and we're going to do a dashed line for that one. Okay, because there's no solid line underneath the inequality. Then I notice that the alligator's mouth is opening towards the y, so we can shade up. So there's our first inequality. Next, we're crossing the y-axis at negative 3, and then we're going up 1 over 1. And so we're going to have a dotted line again. Okay, because there's no solid line underneath. But this time the alligator is facing away, so we need to shade down from the inequality. So because our inequalities, the shading didn't overlap, these are our solutions. Okay, since they don't overlap, our solutions are on the outside there. All right, let's take a look at number 3. So before we can solve this, we have to solve each of those for y. So I start off, I have 3x minus y is greater than or equal to 6. So now I need to solve this for y. So this is a positive 3x. So in order to get positive 3x over to the other side, I need to subtract 3x from both sides. So I have negative y is greater than or equal to negative 3x plus 6. Okay, so now I don't want to know what negative y is. I want to know what y is. So I'm going to start by dividing negative 1 from both sides. So when I divide by a negative, I really need to remember to flip that inequality symbol. And when I flip that inequality symbol, I've taken account the fact that I divided by a negative. Well, negative 3 divided by negative 1 is going to give me positive 3x. 6 divided by negative 1 is going to give me negative 6. So let's go ahead and graph this. We're crossing the y-axis at negative 6. And then our slope is 3, or 3 over 1. So I'm going up 3 and over 1. Now I notice that there's a solid line underneath the inequality, so that means I'm going to have a solid line. And then I notice that my inequality, my alligator is facing away from the y, so that means I shade down. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Let's take a look at that second equation and get that all solved out. All right, so to start off with, we're going to go ahead and we're going to take and we're going to subtract. So we have 2x plus y is less than or equal to 4. Let me correct that a little bit for you. There we go. So this is a positive 2x. So to get it over to the other side, we want to subtract 2x. So then we have y is less than or equal to negative 2x plus 4. So this plus 4 is where we're crossing the y-axis. So we're going to go ahead and cross it at 4. And then our slope is negative 2 over 1. So that means I'm going to go down 2 and right 1. Again, I'm going to have a solid line because there's a solid line underneath my inequality. And then I'm going to shade down from the line. And then I want to color in where it's overlapping, which is right here. So this little triangle in the underneath would be the solution. So make sure you shade that one a little bit darker, just like we did on the previous note sheet. So let's take a look at number 4. So first I have that x, that just x again. Remember, that's a vertical line. So we're going to find x on 3 on the x-axis, and I'm going to draw a vertical line. Now notice my line is solid. That is because there's a solid line underneath the inequality. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to shade to the left because x is getting smaller as you go to the left. Now, before we can solve the next one, before we can graph it, we have to solve for y. So I have x plus y is greater than 2. So this is a positive x, so I need to get x over to the other side. Now it's a positive x, so I'm going to subtract x from both sides. So then I get negative x plus 2. So I'm crossing the y-axis at 2, and then I'm going down 1 over 1, and then I'm going to do a dashed line. And then the alligator is opening towards the y, so I'm going to shade up from there. And now I want to look at where they're overlapping. And they're overlapping right in this corner right here. So that's my solution for number 4, is that corner that they're overlapping in. So let's take a look at this first word problem. The most Jack can spend on bagels and muffins for the cross-country team is $28. A package of 6 bagels costs $2.50. A package of muffins costs $3.50 and contains 8 muffins. He needs to buy at least 12 bagels and 24 muffins. So it's really important that you guys pay attention to this, simply because your word problems on the homework are going to be very similar to this. All right, so I'm just going to give myself some more space there. Okay, so let's write this out. All right, let's first start with the money. So we're going to assume, just to keep it simple, that we're going to spend exactly $28. So when I buy X boxes of bagels, it's going to cost $2.50. And then when I have Y boxes of muffins, it's going to cost me $3.50. And all of that needs to be equal to 28. Likewise, a package of 6 bagels. So for every X package of bagels we buy, we're getting 6 bagels. I'm sorry, this should be an inequality. Okay, so whatever we spend, we want it to be less than or equal to $28. We don't want to spend more than $28. We want to spend up to $28. But we could spend 27, we could spend 24, and so forth. So 6x, we want to have at least. So the amount of bagels we have, we want to be at least 12. So for every X package of bagels we buy, we get 6. And we want to buy at least 12. Okay, same for the muffins. For every package of muffins we buy, we get 8. Okay, and then we want to have at least 24. So I'm going to do some extra work down here, and we need to solve each of those equations for y. So let's start out. So we have 250. So you can just write that as 2.5 as well, and 350y. So now we're going to solve that for y. So I'm going to start by subtracting 2.5x from both sides. And then 3.5y is less than or equal to negative 2.5x plus 28. Then I'm going to go ahead and divide both sides by 3.5. Now this isn't going to give me the nicest number in the whole wide world. So I get y is less than or equal to negative 0.71x plus 8. So it's not the nicest number in the whole world. So I'm just going to go ahead and why don't you solve these for x and y on your own. And when you do that, you get this. You get that x is equal to 2, so x is greater than or equal to 2, and y is greater than or equal to 3. So let's go ahead and start by plotting this guy right here. So we're crossing the y-axis at 8. So I'm going to count up to 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I'm going to count up to 8. And then I'm going down 0.71 and then over 1. So I'm going to go down almost all the way to 1 and then over 1. So I went down almost 1 and then I went over 1. And for that one, I'm going to be shading underneath. That's my money limit. Okay, so that diagonal line right there represents my money limit. So the next thing I want to do is I want to plot this guy right here. So that's going to be a vertical line. So I'm going to find x is equal to 2, and I'm going to draw a vertical line. Again, solid because there's a y underneath it. And then I know that x gets greater as it goes to the right. So this guy is going to be going out this way. Okay. Last but not least, y wants to be at least 3. Okay, so let's go ahead and graph y in red. So we're going to find 3 on the y-axis, and then we're going to draw a solid horizontal line. Remember, y is equal to, then it's greater than, so we're going to be shooting up this way. So the only spot that all of these overlap are in this region right here, this little triangle. So it gives an example of 3 different purchases he can make. I'm going to give an example of 1, and then I want you guys to find 2 more. So I noticed that if I go over 1, 2, 3, so I could go over and I could get 3 bagels. Then if I go over 3 bagels, I can get 1, 2, 3, 4. I could get right here 5. I could get 5 muffins. So what you need to do to find a solution are find points that exist in this white area and name them. So this is the same as the point 3, 5. That exists in that triangle of shading. So go ahead and take a look at that. Let's take a look at this one. Rodell makes $10 an hour cutting grass. So I'm going to let X represent the number of hours he cuts grass, and Y represent the number of hours he spends raking leaves. All right, so next, it says that he makes $10 an hour. So for every X hour he spends cutting grass, he makes $10. And for every Y hour he spends raking, he gets $12. All right, it says here that he wants to earn at least $120 per week. So whatever he makes, we want it to be more or equal to $120. Then it says he cannot work more than 15 hours per week. So the hours he spends raking and the hours he spends cutting grass needs to be less than 15 hours. So for the sake of time, I'm just going to put these in slope-intercept form for you. So when you solve out that first one, you end up getting y is less than or greater than or equal to negative 5/6 x plus 10. And then here you get y is less than or equal to negative x plus 15. So let's go ahead and graph those. So the first one, we're crossing the y-axis at 10. So we're going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And we're plotting that point. Then we're going down 5 and over 6. And we're going to have a solid line. And for this line, we're going to shade above that because we want to make that line represents the hours we'd have to work for exactly $120. So now I want to do my shading for this guy right here. So I'm crossing the y-axis at 15, 1, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Then I'm going down 1 over 1. I'm going to shade down that way. And we want to shade below. So our overlapping shading ends up being between the two. So right here is our answer for our shading, is in between the two right there. Okay, so next, we're going to go ahead and we're going to take a look at stretching our minds a little bit. So we're going to try one that has 3 on it. So x is greater than 0. That's going to be a vertical solid line here. So I'm going to shade that in. And again, to save time, I'm going to solve these for y. When you solve that one for y, you end up dividing by a negative number. So what's going to happen is I'm going to end up flipping my inequality. So then I get this, 1/2 x minus 1. So we're crossing at minus 1, then we're going up 1 over 2, and then we're going to have a dotted line shading up. And last but not least, when you solve that second one, you end up with y is less than or equal to negative 3/4 x plus 3. So graphing that one, you get this as a solid line. So you end up with your shading, just that little triangle in there. Okay, so I'm actually running out of time for this video. So I want you guys to make an attempt at this last problem. Just do the very best you can and just at least get something written down, and then show me your note sheet once you're finished. Thanks for listening.